Welcome to another edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up. During this program, we will highlight the agenda items presented to the Lakeville City Council at their December 5th, 2016 meeting. First highlighted item on the agenda is item number 5C, Introduction of Police Officers. And to give the background information on this agenda item is Police Chief Jeff Long.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight I have the opportunity to introduce 3 officers from our police department. All are experienced, so they've all been through this before. But these officers either have completed their probationary period or are well on their way to doing so. We're very proud to have these officers aboard. You'll see that all 3 have very different backgrounds, but all come to us with some sort of prior experience. I think it's a great compliment to the officers that already work here in this community to have officers with experience choose Lakeville as a place they want to serve. In today's culture, it's tough to be in law enforcement. We're losing out on very good people joining this profession because of the intense criticism that's focused on what we're asked to do. With that said, we not only have 3 great new officers, but they come to us with experience and a proven ability to handle what's thrown at them. It's difficult to call them new, as the mayor indicated, when they join us with the background that they already have, but they're new to us. They will find that Lakeville is a very different community, different than other communities. We have a great deal of support here. We are consistently told thank you. We have food delivered to our front counter on a frequent basis as an acknowledgement of the officers' work. And we even have a public safety foundation to provide extra support to our firefighters and police officers. Not all communities have that. So I'd now like to introduce the 3 officers, and I will start with Officer Noah Landers. If you wouldn't mind stepping forward. Councilmember Swecker likes to know this, but Noah will be 4884. So I made a note, yes. Noah started with us in September of 2015. Noah takes as many tall jokes as I take short jokes. He's had an interesting route to Lakeville, and we hope that this is his last stop on his law enforcement journey. He's been here the longest of the 3 being introduced tonight, but he is already very active in our department. The great thing about bringing in experienced officers is they can step right up and contribute right away, and Noah's doing that. He grew up in Red Wing, Minnesota, but prior to working at Lakeville, he worked for the Bakersfield, California Police Department for 5 years, where he was a school resource officer and a field training officer. He came from Bakersfield back to Prairie Island Tribal Police in Welch, Minnesota, where he worked for 2 years, and he was a field training officer there. He worked at the Metro Transit Police Department for 2 years, where he was a firearms instructor, an academy instructor, and a field training officer. He's married with a 4-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. He chose to come to Lakeville due to the relationships he made with the part-timers from Lakeville that already work at Metro Transit, the community support that he's seen in Lakeville, the opportunities we have, such as our SWAT team and our school officers, and finally, the chance to help with training at the police department. So please welcome Officer Noah Landers. The next officer I want to introduce is Officer Bob Rue. If he'd step up. Bob's badge number is 4885. He started in November of 2015. Bob's another experienced officer that we were able to bring aboard. He had a great deal of experience in law enforcement and had glowing reviews from his prior agency. Bob's application was one of those that you looked at and tried to figure out what we were missing. It seemed too good to be true, but it turns out nothing was missing. He simply wanted to come back to his roots in the metro area. He grew up in Chaska, Minnesota, and graduated from Chaska High School. He attended Minnesota State University in Mankato and received a bachelor's degree in law enforcement. He was hired by the Watertown, South Dakota Police Department in November 2011. In November 2015, he moved back home and started with the Lakeville Police Department. He's married to his wife, Brittany. They had their first child in December of 2015, and they recently purchased their first home within Lakeville city limits. He told me that he was drawn to the city of Lakeville for many reasons. He's excited by the rapid growth and the supplemental positions that we offer within our police department. So please welcome Officer Bob Rue. The last officer I want to introduce is Officer Carrie Wichorek. Step up. 4886 is her badge number. She started in July of 2016. Carrie came to us highly recommended from those officers that were already working for transit. And what I should mention is some of our officers during their off-duty times are part-time police officers for the Metro Transit. So that's how we've gotten to know so many officers within the Transit Police Department. She was referred to me as a no-nonsense, hardworking officer that will always give you everything she has. And this was not the easiest recruitment we've ever had. She liked what she was doing. We contacted her, and in the end, she chose to join our police department. We're grateful she took that chance. You'll find out she's not an officer of many words, and I'll explain that when I'm finished here. But Officer Wichorek went to high school in Northfield. She went to college in Winona. She worked at Metro Transit for 3.5 years with a wide variety of assignments, including their street crimes unit. Street crimes unit at Transit can be very challenging. You can only imagine the investigations and the encounters they have on the transit system throughout the metro area. She indicated she was drawn to Lakeville by the reputation of the community and the reputation of the police department. Before I prepared these speeches, I asked them to write a little bit about themselves so I didn't miss anything. And she wrote a couple things and said, "That's all I got. Let me know if you need more." So that's where the Officer of few words comes from. But please welcome Officer Carrie Wichorek to the City of Lakeville.
Next highlighted item on the agenda is item number 7, public hearing on the adoption of a fee schedule by ordinance. And to provide the information regarding this agenda item is Finance Director Geraldine Erickson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. Just want to touch on just a few of the changes that have been recommended to the council. Not all of them. There's quite a few, I believe 36 changes, so I won't go through all of them, but I wanted to highlight just a few of them. First of all, the first one, the water main unit charge. There's no change being recommended or proposed with the rate itself, but a clarification or a change in the description such that the non-residential water main unit charge has been changed to include high-density, commercial, and industrial properties. And this will allow apartment developments to qualify for the high-density category rather than the residential. The second one is the park dedication fee. The proposed changes reflect increases based on the property values. As we discussed at the council workshop, we looked at the methodology that was proposed a number of years ago. This is consistent with that methodology, and so there are proposed changes in the high-density residential, medium, and low-density residential. And then finally, the utility rates we discussed at length. Changes to the water rates, the sewer rates, the streetlight rates, and the environmental resources rates. And just a little bit of background on that. You'll recall, we looked at the cash flows for each of those utility funds, looked at the balances, and specifically the water fund. In particular, we looked back in 2012. The unrestricted funds in the water fund have steadily declined since 2009. And this is due in part to the associated cost of the maintenance projects that we've been undertaking, the amount of water consumption, which can be dependent on weather, the water rates being reduced significantly in 2010, followed by insignificant increases in 2011, and no increases in the rates in 2012 and 2013, and insignificant increases in 2014 and 2015. And so there is an increase to the utility rate, water rates specifically. I just want to address the amount of that, if I could. Here we go. It would result in with all of the water rate changes and the sewer and streetlight environmental resources, the change would be about $16.40 per quarter, which is about $5.46 per month, or on an annual basis, about $65. And this is on a property using about 18,000 gallons per quarter. So it'd certainly vary if your consumption was higher than that. And with that, if there's any other questions about specific rate changes, I just wanted to highlight those particular ones.
After much discussion and removal of park dedication fees, item number 7 was approved. Next highlighted item on the agenda was item number 8, public hearing on the 2017 budget and tax levy. And once again, to provide the background information on this agenda item is Finance Director Geraldine Erickson.
First of all, as I usually like to do, I like to recognize all the individuals that participate in the process of developing the budget and the tax levy recommendations. So certainly a thank you to all the city staff and the council members for your input and discussion on preparing the budget and the tax levy. And then a special thanks to the finance staff for compiling all the information, reviewing and analyzing the data. And then they are the ones that also prepare the budget document that we put on the website for the public to read. Okay, the 2017 tax levy. It's a funding source for multiple funds. It is proposed to be at $26,679,614. It is a 3.89% increase. This is down from the 4.95% that was proposed and adopted in September. It is just under $1 million increase, and it provides funding for ongoing operations, capital, maintenance, and debt service. This is a summary of the uses of the the tax levy. It's supporting multiple funds, as you can see, the general fund primarily, but also $50,000 towards a street reconstruction project. It would be the 2017 project. Pavement management, which is our ongoing pavement management for miscellaneous road repairs and so forth. Our building fund, which covers major maintenance of facilities. Our equipment fund, which covers replacement of major capital items, vehicles and so forth. Our park improvement fund for the ongoing repair and maintenance of existing parks. Trail improvement, maintenance of existing trails. And then our debt service funds. The city portion of, for example, street and assessment improvement projects, not the assessment side that the property owners, they pay that share, but the city side, the 60%. And the total being $26 million. Lakeville experienced significant growth again, and for 2017, based on reports from the county, we are adding about $147 million to the tax base from new construction. We can equate that to about $664,000 being generated by these new properties. Here's a chart. I just wanted to show you the activity over the last 10 years of new construction. And you can see that we are at a high point back in 2007. And we dipped down in 11 and 12 and 13, but we've had steady growth the last few years. This year, we're certainly on track to have 350 plus single-family homes and close to 70 townhomes. So that's adding significantly to the tax base. This is also a chart on the market value of the new construction, just to break it down. The blue column is residential. That's where the majority of the value is coming. Again, you can see from 2007, a dip down and then increasing back up in the last few years. And certainly we've had growth in commercial and some apartment growth. Our tax capacity rates have been declining the last few years, and this is certainly in part to the growth in our tax base. The impact of the 2017 tax levy on the median valued home is about a $13 increase. And then also at some previous workshops, council members were interested to see what the impact would be on a commercial property. And so a $1 million commercial property would actually see a decrease of about $227 based on the proposed or estimated tax rate. In the general fund, this chart shows the revenues, and you can see that almost 70% of the general fund activities is covered by property taxes, and this is pretty common from city to city, depending on the other funding sources that are available. I will note that another area, another piece of the pie here is use of reserves, and I'm going to be talking about that shortly, why we are using some reserves and the appropriate use of reserves. And here it is. So when we look at how we're using reserves, we want to make sure that we're focusing on one-time uses or long-term uses, not using reserves to pay for ongoing operational expenses. You can run into a lot of trouble if you keep going back to the savings account, and at some point you have to replace that with tax levy. So we focus on, in our recommendations, on using fund balance for one-time uses and long-term uses. Our comp plan updates, they happen about every 10 years. It's an appropriate use. Facility improvements, we're proposing transferring about $200,000 to the building fund for ongoing building maintenance. The equipment replacement, transferring about $945,000 to the equipment fund to pay for replacement of trucks and other vehicles and so forth. This will also eliminate the need to issue short-term equipment certificates in 2017. And then there's other items that we've carried forward that were in the 2016 budget, we were not able to complete. We've already collected the tax revenue to cover those expenses. We shouldn't collect the tax revenue again in 2017. So we are using those reserves that were set aside at the end of, or will be set aside at the end of this year to pay for those items. So a total of about $1.148 million of use of fund balance reserves. On the expenditure side, public safety is the highest percentage of the expenditures, about 44%, and that covers both police and fire. And then not far behind is public works. I guess it's a little bit, not quite right behind public safety, but public works is about 18%. Again, as I mentioned, we're using fund balance to fund certain expenditures, specifically in the transfers out to the equipment fund as well as the building fund. There are a number of new positions that are proposed within the budget. 2 new police officers, a planning assistant code enforcement position, and a parks maintenance position. So these are all within the general fund. As I mentioned, there are quite a few different funds. I wasn't planning to go through all of them. We have discussed at length during the workshops and so forth, the equipment fund and the building fund and so forth, especially as part of our capital improvement program, and we adopted that at the last meeting. But I want to touch on the utility funds and the liquor fund. Certainly we have our 2017 street recon project scheduled for next year. We have ongoing major maintenance, well repair, lift station repair, and so forth. These funds, as presented tonight, do reflect the rate adjustments that were just approved for water and sewer, street lights, and environmental resources. And in the utility funds, there's one new position that is proposed. It's an environmental resources technician, and that's in the environmental resources fund. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Item number 8 was approved by the Lakeville City Council. Well, those were the highlighted items presented to the council at their December 5th, 2016 meeting. If you have any questions or comments regarding these agenda items, please feel free to call City Hall. The number is 952-985-4400. Thanks for watching this edition of Lakeville City Council Wrap-Up.